Every decision we make is human-centered. Consume, extract, profit. It's human-centered decision-making. And human-centered decision-making will produce for us a world that says, I no longer want you to live there.
From the beginning of human existence, man has shared the earth with animals. But with the rapid growth of the human race, we are increasingly being forced to compete for space. This competition poses a severe threat to the existence of species all over the world, and the effects are already being seen in South Africa's Kruger Park. The existence of the African elephant has been in jeopardy for many years due to widespread poaching and the international demand for black market ivory. However, in much of southern Africa, containment, increased protection, and aggressive conservation efforts have resulted in a dramatic increase in the elephant population. This has brought with it a new problem. Elephants are destructive, and a large number of elephants in a confined area wreak havoc on the ecosystem. In response to this, South African officials were forced to kill hundreds of elephants every year in an annual cull that would keep the population to a manageable level. In 1994, due to public outcry, culling was banned and the elephant population was left to thrive. And thrive it did. Today, the Kruger Park has a population of approximately 14,000 elephants. Its ecosystem can only support half that number and is being strained beyond breaking point. The entire landscape is beginning to change.
In certain areas, the bush has opened up and changed from a bushy structure to a grassland structure.
The question is, how many elephants should there be? And this is now the trick question. If you've got no elephants in the system, then because the elephants have a beneficial effect when they're at low densities, you need elephants in the system to create this biodiversity. They dig for water in dry riverbeds. This makes water available to other species, so very important in the system. But what happens when you start to get too many elephants? Okay, here again we see this conversion from a woodland to a grassland. And that's what elephants do. The process is shifting from a woodland to a grassland. If you remove elephants, it goes the other way.
The biodiversity of the Kruger National Park is the attraction for international visitors to come to this park. Ecotourism generates an enormous amount of income for national parks like the Kruger Park. So if any particular species is going to have an impact on that and animals are going to be lost because of the impact that one particular species like elephants have on the biodiversity of the Kruger National Park, that's obviously going to have an impact on tourism.
And it's a fairly simple question. Do we manage a park like Kruger for elephants? Do we not worry about biodiversity? Or do we manage for biodiversity? That's the question. It can be one or the other, but not both. You can't do both. You can have elephants, but you can't allow elephants just to increase and expect to retain all of the elements of biodiversity that were in that park.
There is no easy solution, far from it. Over the last few years, many experts have argued that the only way to dramatically and quickly reduce the population is to resume culling. The suggestion has reignited a fierce debate in South Africa.
How dare you cull the elephants? That's not acceptable. Unless it's acceptable to cull a few humans as well, it's the same philosophy, and you have to look at it in the same light. Who the hell gives us the right to cull an elephant? Or put another way around, if you oaks are cool with this, I'll just come in with a helicopter over the Californian suburbs and pick out a few families. Just pick that family out and cull them, and that family and cull them, because it's a bit crowded in California. We're running out of water, so we'll knock out a couple of families. Does that sound acceptable? I would say it's probably not.
I think that elephant culling should be high on the list of options to pursue. I really think so.
Culling, though a very unappealing alternative to many people, is still, I believe, a viable tool for managers.
Because crowding has such a disastrous effect on the psyches of any animal, then I think if there is a limited amount of habitat, then we have to face the fact that rather than having a larger number of animals all going crazy, we may need to cull some of them in order that the rest of them can have a healthy life.
We know what we need to do, just nobody wants to make that decision. Some places are going to need to cull, other places may be fortunate enough to translocate, and that's something we're going to need to have to deal with. If it's to cull, we need to cull and do it and move on with it. If it's to translocate, let's translocate and then either implement immunocontraception to stabilize that population. Otherwise, again, in 20 years' time, you're going to need to translocate.
You got to ask yourself, is it better or worse to cull elephants or do nothing and allow species to be lost? In South Africa, we had many years of elephant culling, and people began to accept it and to, tolerate it because they could see that it was an ecological necessity and that it was done as humanely as possible. What's considered to be the most humane way of doing it is to take the whole family. So you come in with a helicopter, low level, you can be just above his head, and you go doof, doof, doof. The guys get very good at it, so death is pretty much instantaneous. They can do a group of elephants, 15 elephants in a matter of minutes.
Obviously, being a conservationist, you're here for conservation, you're not here to kill animals. That becomes part of the job. And I've seen rangers walking away with tears in their eyes after culling. They just disappear into the bush.
For myself, the first few culls that I just attended, it was very traumatic, because they are just such wonderful animals. But after a while, you kind of close your mind to it, otherwise I think you'll go mad.